r/AskReddit. Covert Mellow says, what is the most absurd thing that's ever happened to you? The thing that no one would believe if you told them. Smith says, sat in a tree stand once and something hit my head pretty hard. I had a hat on. I didn't think much of it as a squirrel was above me in a tree and I figured he dropped what he was eating and it hit me. A few minutes later it happened again. Now I'm trying to figure out what is going on as the squirrel wasn't above me anymore. As I'm looking around I see movement out of the corner of my eye and look to see a small owl, wings locked, feet out, heading right at me at what felt like Mach 10. I immediately yelled and waved the owl off and didn't see it again. All I can figure is the owl thought my hat was a squirrel. Not funny when you see an owl heading at your head. Hilarious now though. Fish Out Tab Whiskey says, same coin, different side. I was in a tree stand and a squirrel saw me and I could tell it was wondering what the hell I was. This thing had hatred in his eyes and he climbed up the tree to my right and sat, staring intently at me, wondering if he should jump at me or not. Well, he decided to jump and I actually swatted him out of the air and he let out his little squirrel noises before landing and running off to a tree that was thankfully not in jumping distance from me. Magic_chef says, I'm convinced that the squirrel language is composed entirely of profanity. Calorisigara says, 1 week after I got my phone, decided it would be a good idea to get a screen protector on it since it was expensive at the time. Next day I go to school, my class was on the 2nd floor. During the break I was chilling on my phone in a spot close to a window that was open. Some kids in the school courtyard decided to throw small stones at the window. One stone hit the window itself and bounced right beside my head directly into my phone's screen, shattering the screen protector in pieces. It's been 5 years since that happened and my parents still don't believe me. Spasmus says, my phone flew out of my pocket on the corkscrew of a roller coaster and when we found it the only thing broken was the screen protector. The rest of the phone was totally fine. I can't believe such a cheap thing saved it. Bingleleman says, go put that on the company's review page. Umaguma87 says, the Yakuza dropped me home when I was in Tokyo. Trusted a dodgy come to my Buffalo, went, got drugged, robbed, and thrown out, and at 6 in the morning a Yakuza gentleman dropped me home for free. Hemingwaybles 21121 says, at least they dropped you home. But goddamn, I'm torn from being fearful and morbidly fascinated of getting into that situation, especially since I'm flying to Japan next week. Mayo. Kit_cat_Barkalen just says, avoid bars where there are people outside inviting/entice you to enter for a 2000 all you can drink special as they are notoriously owned/run by shady Yakuza types. OKBed6343 says, in 2nd grade, we had a puke-a-thon on the bus, ride home with a substitute bus driver. One kid threw up which led to many more throwing up, including me. People were climbing over seats and sticking their heads out the window to avoid being next. It was like a scene out of a war movie. The driver never said a word and just kept driving. He had to be in his late 70s. I never saw him again. I always imagined he found that day as motivation to retire completely. Simbuptendo says, it does sound like a war movie. I can just imagine all the kids throwing up in slow motion whilst Adagio 4 strings plays. Dumda says, laughed so hard at this vision, thank you. Nematheana Trugad says, flipped a coin for a very important decision. Failed to catch it, fell to the floor, bounced once and then got stuck between 2 floor tiles on its edge. Logang94 says, did you flip again? Or what did you decide to do? Covert Mellow says, I need to hear this too. Melman Court says, first year at university in a flat of 6 males. Was making a chili with fresh chilies. Suddenly, I needed the toilet and went to the loo for a pee. Halfway through a pee, I started getting a burning sensation on the end of my old fella. Bizarrely, our toilet room didn't have a sink. Each individual bedroom had a sink instead, so I ran to my room and flopped the big man in the sink and then started running cold water into the sink. By this time, I'm crying, tears streaming down my face with my todger in a sink of ice cold water. At this point, my phone rings, and for reasons unknown, I answer to speak to my girlfriend. So I'm crying in pain, dick in sink on the phone to my girlfriend. The next thing I hear is a cough and a WTF. I turn to see my flatmate, who is torn between horror, amusement, and bewilderment watching my bizarre performance. I had not closed my bedroom door properly. So, to clarify, my flatmate caught me with my chill, covered penis in a sink, while talking to my girlfriend in tears. r/AskReddit. Venus_Susan says, in a job that is not public facing, what is the strangest thing that has happened to you, or have you found? Antelope_Fine says, was working in an auction house/furniture gallery. Imagine like expensive art and really rare furniture. Like most things cost tens of thousands of dollars and we were appointment only. Basically, this is a way for super wealthy people to turn that money into asset value/wealth/whatever. Like at some point you have to start buying art and furniture that you'll never actually use because it's all art and depreciates in value. We had a huge warehouse full of inventory. My job was to create and update our database and website, move things around, take some photos, etc. Easy high 5-figure income. One day while moving a French couch in our deco area, a coin fell out. I picked it up and immediately recognized it as a Vichy franc, because I'm a I'm dork who collected coins. I check the year, 1942. Interesting. It's in very good condition. I Google it. And there is one listed on eBay for like something like $1,000. Now, a lot of this furniture is old and imported. Like, it is not insane to think that this couch was owned by a French person living somewhere in Vichy, France, or realistically anywhere in France, and that this coin fell out of their pocket into their couch, and then my boss, one day in the 60s, bought this couch in France along with a lot of other stuff, and brought it back, and had yet to sell it, and so that this coin sat for decades. Would explain the condition, etc. So I do some digging, and find out my boss got the couch in like, nice, in 1981 from whatever the French equivalent of an estate sale is, from a family that had formerly been in a suburb of Vichy. So anyway, too long, didn't read, I found a relatively valuable Nazi coin in a French. Glacier Actor 179 says, I don't know if this counts, but I'm a science teacher. Getting major purchases takes a long time and a lot of paperwork. So one day I get a shipment to my room number, but with a different, long gone, teacher's name. It was 300 dead frogs. I definitely don't need them. Biology teacher doesn't need them. It's a weird thing to ask teachers, but no one needs them. So we just had the custodians dump them. Lean Pian says, I was a mechanic for Nissan in Nashville for a while, found over 2 pounds of weed in the right front quarter panel of a Nissan Altima, just put it back, and pretended I had never seen it. Interesting_tone 6532 says, a hidden room. I used to work as a cleaner who specialized in flood aftermaths and water damage. One day some genius decided to pour concrete down a drain when it was raining hard, as they had a rivalry with another construction site or company, so poured it down a drain outside their yard. Of course it was caught on CCTV, but that's not what we found. The flooding caused massive damage as there were houses nearby that were below ground level. So after the tanker sucked up as much water as possible, it was up to us in hazmat suits to shovel out the sewage inside this person's home. Well, in their kinda basement there had been a very heavy wardrobe that had come with the house, so we had to dismantle it and remove it as it was heavily contaminated with raw sewage. As we moved it, we noticed part of the wall behind it had been dislodged by the water, and so had to get a structural engineer to check it was safe. After confirming it was safe, he discovered a room beyond it that went under the main road outside. Inside the room was a single old-fashioned chair in the center of the room, which was creepy enough, and a ton of old creepy paintings and stuff that would have been worth a lot if they hadn't been underwater and ruined. As far as the owners could tell, the room hadn't been opened in at least 40 years, but looked much older from what was inside. Doesn't explain why it was bricked up, but the paintings were the kind that their eyes seemed to follow you wherever you went in the it says. I worked as a third shift custodian for a private school. The school was well funded and had a lot of stuff. There was a basement storeroom for the science department that had jars and jars of dead things floating in formaldehyde. Lachwan says, I breed laboratory rodents. One day I was checking over some animals to make sure they were good enough to send off to a lab, and I found a mouse with no butthole. This was not a case of the butthole being hidden behind some swelling, or fur or scar tissue, or whatever. The spot where the anus should have been was completely smooth and featureless. A baby mouse, you ask? Oh, goodness no, this was a fully adult mouse. But Lachwen, if it had no butthole, then how did it excrete waste? I'm so glad you asked, and the answer is, and I swear I'm not making this up, through her vagina. I know this because I watched it happen. No future egg guy says. Sometimes when we were starting new jobs on old buildings, churches, and hospitals mainly, we had to find the time capsule with the original plans and pictures and letters in it. Always a fun time. Ambrosov says. While excavating soil at a site in Morristown, New Jersey, I unearthed Revolutionary War era cannonballs. Bob_er_feet says. Worked a Geek Squad years ago, downloading missing drivers on client PC, found very obvious XAML downloads folder, client had thumbnails turned on. PC taken by police, state lab, frick, s up, and the case gets thrown out. Best Buy gets sued in small claims. We end up having to basically buy this pedo a new PC. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.